Hello! Welcome to another Wild Ride, a character deep dive which I will try and make as short as possible, but hey, no promises. So, Sword of Serenity. It's a bit of a higher level concept, which gets online around level 11, at least in terms of all the toys that you get to use. It's a very potent party phase, can serve as both a support, control and damage role in combat. And because of the fact it's made out of several subclasses which are kind of conflicted, it's also a little bit of a conflicted flavor, thematic type of character, which I like personally. I like playing those the most. But some of you don't. In that case, though, you can still play it. You just kind of get to ignore certain parts of it, right? Alright, let's jump into the race. Obviously, you have the custom lineage because you need that level 1 feat. This character, because of the fact that you get to multi-class into 4 different classes, you don't really get as many ability score improvements, and you want the feats. So yeah, obviously there's like not much choice in that department, at least mechanically. Point buy obviously is a bit stretched. You need 15 strength to be able to carry plate mail heavy armor, 14 in constitution because 12 is just way too low, 13 in wisdom to be able to go into the cleric, and then 16 in charisma because, well, you're a charisma type of character. In terms of backgrounds, you have the rewarded background, which obviously is one of those new backgrounds from the Book of Many Things, which comes with a choice of 3 different feats: Lucky, Magic, Initiate and Skilled. I think Lucky is the best because obviously it gives you a reroll once you roll badly, or if your DM rolls, well, high or something, you get to force the DM to roll again. Obviously in that case, if the DM doesn't allow all these new power creepy feat inflation backgrounds, you can go back to something like a faction agent, which would be kind of like a catch-all solution to all to most campaigns, if not all of them, right? Alright, so onto the feats. Resilient, as I've already said, you grab this at level 1 in order to, well, have 14 constitution instead of 13. And primarily later on for concentration spells, because constitution saving throws are made every time you have to make concentration saves. Yeah, that's gonna be relevant later on, but obviously at the beginning you get a little bit more hit points and it's just overall good, right? After that we have the Warcaster. Obviously it combos with Resilient, it's a known combo. No reason not to take it on this character either. You can kind of wait a bit longer with that, you don't have to grab it as soon as possible, but it's kind of like up to you. More on that later. And then Mana Magic Adept, obviously, this is like the fully optional choice because it's kind of like just more of a what I would want to do instead of what is necessarily the best, most optimal thing, if such a thing even exists. For these kinds of characters which are not super specialized in any department, but yeah, I'm a sorcerer fanboy and I just like to have some quickened and subtle spell meta magics. The first one obviously is for action economy. It allows you to combo certain spells and features better, easier, faster. And the other one is obviously very good because you get to cast spells without anybody even knowing that you're doing it, which is very, very powerful in social encounters, and also very good in combat because you get to cast spells and nobody can counterspell you. In fact, you can cast counterspell without anybody counterspelling your counterspell. So yeah, sorcerer supremacy. Let's go. Anyway, classes. The Paladin, right? We have the... Alright, scroll to the top. The 6 levels in Paladin, obviously a bit more hit points at the beginning with the 1d10 hit die. You get all the proficiencies and all of that. Divine Sense, not that important in terms of like the theme, but it's always good in campaigns with a lot of fiends and undead. You get Lay on Hands, which is good healing in a pinch. You get Fighting Style. I usually go with Defense, which is I think what I did here. But obviously you can go with other ones, especially if you want to go for a more thematic choice like Blessed Warrior, which would kind of make sense. That said, however, it's a little bit of a redundant choice because you get a dip into a cleric anyway, so you will grab all the most important cleric cantrips from that. However, you do you, right? Whatever you want. And then we have the spellcasting. Obviously, you have the spells. You're not a full spellcaster, you're a half caster. But certain ones are gonna be very good as well for you. More on that later. Divine Smite, obviously one of the most important combat damage features, right? I mean, you get to boost all of your attacks which hit with the extra damage if you burn slots. And you get to burn slots a bit better than most paladins because, hey, you're a multi-class into a bard, which is a full caster, therefore your spell slot progression is gonna be faster as well. Divine Health, obviously immunity to diseases. You get the Sacred Oath. Let me quickly jump into that. Okay, so the Oath of Redemption. Not gonna go too much into fluff here, already kind of talked about it in the first video. The spells and all of that is fine, like nothing too much to talk about there. What's important is the Emissary of Peace. This is pretty much, I think, the only reason I chose this subclass, because I decided to go the route of becoming a bit better party phase than most other charisma characters. So +5 bonus to charisma persuasion checks is gonna be relevant because it's gonna stack with a bunch of other features this character gets access to. Going back to the primary core class features, kind of went through all of these. Obviously at level 4 you get 1 ability score improvement, which you will use for bumping up your charisma or taking one of those feats. Extra attack, obviously. As a martial, you get to attack twice. And then finally, the reason to go 6 levels in Paladin instead of 5 is for the Aura of Protection, which, as many of you, all of you, I think, I hope, know, is one of the most... Well, it's a busted feature. I often say that it should be a level 10 feature, not level 6. But hey, it is what it is. So you get to support yourself and everybody around you in close proximity with a +3, 4, 5 based on your charisma modifier to all of the saving throws. Which is, you know, it's just ridiculous sometimes. Anyway, so going into the Cleric, we get the core class features, which are not that important. Yes, you get a couple of spells and cantrips and all of that, which is all nice and dandy. What we want is the subclass for the one specific feature called Emboldening Bond, which allows you to, for 10 minutes, add 1d4 to all attack rolls, ability checks, or saving throws. Pretty much all of the d20 rolls you can make in 5th edition D&D. For 10 minutes. It is once per turn, but it does also stack with Bless, Guidance, and all the other stuff that further buffs your ability checks, attack rolls, and saving throws. So more on that later. But yeah, this is pretty much the biggest reason to go here. Obviously, you gain proficiency in one of the skills. This is more of a ribbon feature, but hey, you get to grab performance at the very least, right? Because you already have the other two. Quickly into the Hexblade. Again, the only reason to go here is because you get the Hex Warrior feature. Going back to the point buy, it's a bit stretched to begin with, and if you just kind of like later on calculate how many ability score improvements and feats you still have to take as you keep leveling up, you will realize that you can't put your strength and charisma up to 20, both of them at the same time. So you kind of have to sacrifice one level, which is good because, well, you get to ignore strength for your attack rolls. You can just use your charisma, and if you bump up your charisma to 20, which you get to do sooner or later anyway, you will maximize your attack potential and all the other features that go off of your charisma, which is many of them. Obviously, you also get Hexblade's Curse. You also get a Shield spell, which is very good as well. This is pretty much the only way that it's left for this character to grab this spell. +5 to armor class. More on that later maybe, but for now it's that. Yeah. You also get core class features, obviously the Pact Magic and a couple of those spells. But yeah. The main component of this character is the Bard, 12 levels of College of Eloquence. I was stuck in between swords, which, as a lot of you, many of you, all of you know, has these blade flourishes, which make it a really good combination with the Paladin, because on top of just more spell slots and higher level spell slots to burn on Divine Smite, you also get like further increase your armor class. You can deal a bit more damage and get a bit more mobility, right? So I mean, get a little bit more control, sorry. And on top of that, you also gain additional 2 fighting styles. However, I thought, you know what, like, you already have enough just raw combat potential via the Bard's Spellcaster spell progression. You have the Hexblade to attack with Charisma, and you just have the Paladin with extra attack and Divine Smite. So I figured, I just don't think it matters that much at higher levels to like just max out as much as possible your damage dealing and all of that. So yeah, for that reason I went with the Eloquence, because it's busted. You know, it's one of the most busted classes, subclasses in the game. primarily because you get the Silver Tongue, which, as you can read, you cannot roll below 10 on Persuasion and Deception. And then, once we go back to the Paladin, right, so the Oath of Redemption, which Emissary of Peace gives you a +5 bonus to Persuasion. And then on top of that, you cannot roll below 10. And then on top of that, you also have the, where was I? Okay, so class features. You also have Expertise, right? So, Expertise, you double the proficiency bonus in 2 skills of your choice, which obviously it would be Persuasion and Deception in this particular instance. Pair that with the Emissary of Peace, pair that with the Cleric, right? Don't forget about the Emboldening Bond, which adds 1d4 to all ability checks once per turn, but it's often enough. So you're looking at something like, at level 11 at least, if I'm not mistaken, +8 from Expertise, +3 from Charisma, +2d4 from Emboldening Bond and Guidance, because you also get Guidance cantrip from the Cleric. You get to a lot of bonuses, and then on top of that, you cannot roll below 10. So your averages would be around 30, maybe even like 35 or something like that at higher levels. And yeah, like if you keep failing with that, that just means your DM is pissed at you because you're playing one of the most broken subclasses in terms of like social encounters in the game. But anyway, enough about that. You also get Unsettling Words, which is also good because as much as Silver Tongue is good in, let's say, out of combat, this is like your, I guess, combat feature most of the time. Sometimes you can use it out of combat as well, but yeah, for the most part this would be used there. You get a lot of spells which, well, not a lot, but a couple of spells which would stack with this as well, namely Bane and Synaptic Static, but more on that later. You at higher levels get Unfailing Inspiration. I like to call this Unfair Inspiration because this is the only Bard subclass character that can gain some mileage out of the Bardic Inspiration, and if the target of the Bardic Inspiration which receives it fails fails whatever roll it failed after rolling the Bardic die, it gets to keep it, right? So it's just, I don't know. Whoever made this subclass was pretty pissed off at like failed D20 rolls, I think. I don't know. That person might hate some randomness or like failing. I don't know, I'm just talking out of my ass. Let's move on. So Universal Speech, sorry. Yeah, it's cool. It's kind of like more of a ribbon feature. Not too much to tell about it. And at level 10, going back to the core class features, you gain the Magical Secrets. I did skip through a couple of these. Yeah, just quickly, Counter Charm. A lot of people don't like this ability, this feature. And yes, in most cases it's kind of dead and it's a little bit underpowered for level 6 compared to what some other classes get. But actually, it doesn't waste any of your resources, and if entire party starts like failing those saves to get affected by frightened or charmed conditions, I don't know, this just comes up from time to time, very useful. I've seen it, so I've used it myself, and it was actually probably the best play I could have made at that point, because just everybody was charmed and we were looking at like desperate measures, and this was it. Anyway, so yeah, Expertise, already talked about it. Song of Rest is nice, not too much. At least on higher levels it doesn't matter that much. Jack of all trades, it's cool because all of your ability checks and skill checks are just better. Yeah, anyway, other than that, Bardic Inspiration, the standard core class feature, which you get to use with Unsettling Words. I think this character would use it more on Unsettling Words. In fact, it actually might be that you're gonna use it exclusively on this. But yeah, anyway, enough about that. Let's move on to the spells, right? So that's about that. So move on to the other window. Quickly, Guidance, already talked about it. You get this with the Cleric or with the Blessed Warrior fighting style if you choose to go that route. Either way, plus 1d4 to all ability checks for the minute is good with Emboldening Bond. And obviously for you specifically, it's gonna buff your Persuasion and Deception checks, which are already crazy because you can't roll below 10 on a d20. Spare the Dying, kind of like a little bit of a thematic choice, but it's always good to have this just in case you run out of healing resources, spell slots and all of that. Mending, you know, I know sometimes peace can only be achieved through repairing a broken piece. Yeah, let's just move on. I don't know why I wrote this, but I'm gonna keep it there. Mind Sliver, I like this because it synergizes well with Unsettling Words. If we go back to the Unsettling Words, over here, somewhere, let me find it. Yeah, there we go. So, it's, you inflict a penalty on the creature's saving throw. And then when you stack it with Mind Sliver, which inflicts further penalty, 1d4, you can stack this even further with spells like Bless, gonna talk about it soon. And then at some point you can even be super crazy and at higher levels stack it with Synaptic Static, but yeah, one thing at a time. This, if you have enough time, if you have enough turns, the amount of penalties you can inflict on a creature, if that creature fails all the saving throws, obviously. But it keeps getting easier and easier as you keep stacking these features. It's kind of crazy. The damage is nothing to boast about, but yeah, it's better than nothing. It's just standard 1d6 for these types of cantrips. And then on top of that we have the Chill Touch with the Warlock. Now you may be wondering why I didn't take Eldritch Blast. I just don't think this character needs it. Like, you just have enough spells that don't deal damage, that do stuff at range, which you're probably gonna use before just mindlessly throwing some cantrips around, right? I think Chill Touch is better because it has the extra perk of preventing the target from getting any type of healing. And yeah, it's 1d8 necrotic damage, which is not as good as 1d10 force damage that the Eldritch Blast does, but I just like the utility, the kind of like control of preventing the healing from time to time. It's situational, yes, but when the situation arises, you're gonna be pretty happy with this, as I was many times. Anyway, so Bard cantrips, you get friends. Be careful, this cantrip makes, well, at least in my case, maybe I just don't know how to use it, more enemies than friends. You get Vicious Mockery, it's like a signature Bard cantrip. You get Minor Illusion, which is very universal cantrip for unlimited type of like creative solutions to problems. And then finally you kind of get a choice between Message, Prestidigitation and Mage Hand. At least I would be kind of like in a decision paralysis between these three at some point when I get a choice for a fourth cantrip. Whatever you like, I like personally for this character probably the Message, because I think it would fit the theme a little bit better than the other two. But you know, it's more of a preference than actually what's better. It does somewhat rely on what's important in the campaign, in the type of scenarios that you find yourself more often. If you're like, you know, dealing with a bunch of levers and just having to, you know, like magically move stuff around at a close proximity, then Mage Hand. But yeah, that's very specific to you and your circumstances. Moving on to the level 1 spells, you get the Command, standard Paladin spell, pretty nice control. It doesn't last long, but it's a level 1 spell, it's always good to have it just like in a pinch. Shield of Faith or Protection from Evil and Good. I wouldn't really prepare both of them, I would just take one or the other. At higher levels, I think Protection from Evil and Good is a bit better than Shield of Faith, because obviously armor class loses potency at higher levels because enemies... The bonuses to attack rolls that the enemies get outpace the bonuses to armor class that you get. Your armor class is pretty much just like fixed for the most part. It's always just +2 from Shield of Faith, +5 maybe from the shield spell as a reaction, and that's it. Like, that's your bonus. +7, which is at level 1, well, level 7, 8, right? And level 20. So yeah, for that reason I do value this at higher levels a bit better. That said though, if you're not dealing with any of these creature types and you know you have like a certain, let's say, high amount of certainty that you're not gonna be dealing with any of these creature types, then this spell is useless, right? So there's that. Wrathful Smite, one of the best, if not still the best, Paladin Smite spell. So this is not a Divine Smite feature, this is a spell. Namely because the damage is not important here. It's psychic, so it's kind of good in the department of like not that many creatures being resistant to it. But the most important part is that it inflicts Frightened Condition. At higher levels it's not gonna be that good because a lot of enemies are gonna have Frightened Condition immunity, but it still from time to time comes up just to have a bit of an easier time dealing with a bunch of enemies, right? One by one, but you know, controlling them in that department. Anyway, I'm rambling, let's move on. So what's next? Heroism, right? I kind of sorry, I kind of don't know here whether heroism or divine favor is better. It kind of depends, again, on a bunch of factors. I like divine favor a bit better, but maybe heroism is better as well because you get to protect you and your allies from frightened condition, which if you're dealing with often is pretty good because it's only like a couple of spell slots, first, second or higher. At level 3 you can pretty much just like affect 3 people, which is often enough to deal with most combat encounters where frightened condition is a problem. So yeah, it's up to the individual circumstances and preferences, more or less. Bless. Alright, moving on to the Cleric. Now this spell you would prepare with Paladin for the first, well, 6 levels since you're only a Paladin. But as soon as you grab the Cleric level, that Peace Cleric level, which gives you the Emboldening Bond plus 1d4 on all attack rolls, saving throws and ability checks, you can then in combat stack this with the Bless spell. You will need 2 turns to activate both of those, but if damage is out of option, if that's just not important, if succeeding on saving throws is more important, if just for whatever reason you figure out that your party needs these support buffs more than you need to deal damage or do anything else, cast other spells, yes, this is one of the prime tools in your, let's say, toolkit, right? Detect magic, you are a cleric, right? So you get ritual casting, and as that you will be able to cast this spell ritually, and there's no reason not to prepare it because it doesn't require wisdom, similar to Bless. Which is kind of like part of the reason why I chose these 2 spells to prepare as a cleric. Neither one of them requires your wisdom score, which, if you remember, gonna scroll back up a little bit, is very low, right? And it's never gonna go above 13. It's pretty much just the minimum requirement for the ability to multi-class into the cleric subclass. Sorry. So yeah, for that reason and just overall these spells are good, I chose them. Okay, so Shield, already talked about it. It's a Warlock spell, it's the Hexblade spell specifically. No reason not to take it, just learn it. You're gonna be relying on it for pretty much the entire time. Unfortunately, it's one of those spells, like if you have it on your list, you almost must take it. It just feels bad not to take it, so yeah, there's that. And then I kind of went a little bit, I don't know if outside of the norm here is the correct term, but this is definitely not something that, I don't know. I'm just gonna say my reasoning, right? You get the Find Steed spell as a Paladin, which we are gonna talk about soon. And that spell in particular has the ability to kind of like duplicate all of the spells with a casting range of self. To go from just being cast on you to the mount, to the steed, right? And for that reason, I like the Expeditious Retreat. So this spell pretty much just doubles your movement speed. Well, not yours. In this case, it would be your mount's movement speed. And yeah, I just like it because the mount doesn't really get to use a bonus action for anything anyway. And you get extra mobility, which is for primarily frontline type of character very important. Because if you need to deal damage, your best option is to just get in somebody's face and hit it with as many divine smites as possible, and this way you get to do it, right? So there we go. I just took it for that reason. Anyway, moving on. I'm trying to make this as short as possible. It's already 23 minutes. Let's move on. Bane. As I've said before, and I'm gonna mention it again, even though your Bless and Emboldening Bond is, I don't know, kind of like your sort of go-to support combo, or at least the thing you don't do when you don't deal damage. This is kind of like your plan B, or at least a plan for when you just have to rely on something like this. So, Bane, with the, what is the name? Mind Sliver cantrip. And then on top of that you get the Unsettling Words, which we've seen before. It's just, you know, as I've said, crazy amount of penalties. And yeah, if you ever play this type of character, let me know in the comments if you pull something like this off. I've never managed to do it myself, but I do know that once I did Bane and Mind Sliver, it was pretty amazing. Just the 2d4 penalty was pretty nuts. Anyway, so Silvery Barbs. Again, like this reaction spell has been talked about to death. Not much to tell about it. Every time somebody uses it in in my campaigns and at my tables and in parties that I play as a player or whatever. It's just crazy, right? And it's not overpowered as some people like to say, but it's definitely if you have it, it's one of those reaction spells that like there's almost no reason not to take it, right? Healing word, yeah, reaction bonus action heal just to bring somebody up from 0 hit points. And then finally we have identify, which you don't really have to learn as a bard if there's a wizard around who already has it. But yeah, bard is usually there to cover up if there's no wizard in a party, and this is one of those spells which is very useful when you get to, you know, figure out what some mysterious magic item is, or what kind of like spell is affecting your party mate or some important NPC and whatnot. Anyway, so yeah, alright, that was way too fast. Moving on to the aid. Alright, no reason not to take this either. Level 2 paladin spells, extra hit points, never bad. Fine steed, already mentioned it, but yeah. I usually go with the warhorse because I think it's just the best overall compromise. You can go with like these, what would I say, thematic choices. I don't know, if you're playing in a desert, then I guess camel would make more sense. But otherwise, yeah, the main thing is that you pretty much just kind of like improve your mobility, because just 30 feet of movement speed is not optimal for a frontline type of character, especially at higher levels where a lot of enemies are very, very fast. And yeah, this gets to like keep it, right? This allows you to keep up with their movement speed. That's pretty much it, right? So Zone of Truth, it's more of a thematic choice in this case, but yeah, if you want to figure out like, okay, are you saying the truth or not, this is the spell for it. And in peace negotiations, sometimes that's important, let's say, right? Warding Bond, you don't really have to take it, but other than that, it's kind of like, I like to have it on these types of characters that are reasonably tanky, just in case there's like something really squishy in a party, a wizard or sorcerer, or just somebody who decided to play a character with 10 constitution and dies in 2 hits. Yeah, this is good. And it kind of fits the theme a little bit, because you do lean a lot into the support role as well, instead of just being a damage dealer and controller. So this would definitely fit that as well. Moving on to the Bard, level 2 spells, we have Suggestion and Silence. This is kind of like a temporary spell. I usually unlearn it for its bigger brother, Mass Suggestion, at higher levels, super high levels, right? But sometimes I also keep it because you get to do a lot of stuff with this, right? Especially if you're dealing with a lot of NPCs. Yeah, this is, I mean, you can do a lot of stuff with this if you figure out how to, right? And then Silence, obviously, sometimes you need silence in order to establish peace, right? It makes sense. We have the, that's way too fast, Slow and Hypnotic Pattern. I'm torn between these two every time I get to choose, since most classes that get one of those get the other as well. Slow is better because it doesn't rely on the, there's no way to avoid it other than succeeding on a saving throw. Whereas Hypnotic Pattern, if the creature is immune to being charmed, it's pretty much this spell doesn't work, right? Immunity to charmed, there we go, if it doesn't work. But on the other hand, it's Hypnotic Pattern offers a higher degree of control, because charm condition is better because, well, you know, it's also incapacitated, so that creature doesn't get to do much of anything, right? Whereas in Slow, it's, yes, you remove its armor class and dexterity saving throws, you make them worse, and you affect its action economy and all of that. It's cool, but the creature still gets to maybe attack, move, and do something. So, I don't know. It's, I've used both have been good. It's kind of like a preference, right? I don't want to make like any definitive answer here. Dispel Magic, it's kind of like I often regret having this spell like just permanently learn, but then like 27 sessions in, something happens and there's like, this is the spell to use. It's like the best solution for that problem, and then I'm happy. So yeah, there you go. I don't know. Tell me in the comments if you have a different experience. But yeah, it's for me, it's kind of like been consistently like that. Leomon's Tiny Hut, it's kind of similar to Identify, where if there's a wizard who does it, you don't have to, but if there's not, you kind of have to, because this is one of the best long rest in the middle of the wilderness jungle or whatever, somewhere outside of civilizations, kind of protection spells. Yeah, it's just good. There we go. It's utility. No reason not to have it. Confusion, good control. Yes, when peace is disturbed, this character is ready to inflict some chaotic mental anguish. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Whoever wrote this is a cringe lord. So, Dimension Door, extra mobility. It's a decent 500 feet area. You get to, like, get in and out of spicy spots in a one run, right? So, there we go. Also, you can kind of, like, quicken it sometimes. Don't forget, if you take the Meta Magic Adept. But yeah, now Synaptic Static, right? There's a lot of level 5 spells that the bards have access to, but I think Synaptic Static is just like the... In my mind, it stands out a bit more than the rest of them, because you remember how you can like stack Mindsliver, Bane, and Unsettling Words for like -2d4, -1d8, 1d10, 1d12, depending on your bard level. On top of that, you get to stack 1d6 penalty against the spellcasters on their concentration saves, right? So, and on top of that, you deal decent amount of psychic damage, pretty much just like Fireball level. Yes, it's a level 5 spell, it's not a level 3 spell, but this is pretty nice, right? So, I like this spell, and whenever I use it against spellcasters, I like it even more, right? You get Rary's Telepathic Bond, which is just a decent utility to be able to silently communicate with your party mates at all times, which has many benefits. Legend Lore, again, it's more of a situational choice, but if you get to deal with a lot of like uncertainties and lacking clues and mystery and intrigue and all of that, this spell can oftentimes fast track, like it can quicken that. It can really speed up the clue gathering part of the whatever you're dealing with. And then finally, for like the level 6 spells, which are the highest spells, you get access to Mass Suggestion and Otto's Irresistible Dance. The only reason why these spells are bad are again why the Hypnotic Pattern is sometimes bad, is the immunity to charmed conditions. So when that happens, you're kind of like left with, well, nothing, but at the same time, that's not something that's like that ubiquitous, whereas you don't get to ever use these spells at high levels. There's a reason these spells are level 6, right? Both of them. Otto's Irresistible Dance is crazy amount of control for a single target, because the target doesn't even get the saving throw. It's just, you choose one creature, the target begins a comic dance in place, blah blah blah. A dancing creature must use all of its movement to dance without leaving its space and has disadvantage on dexterity saving throws and attack rolls. So this just happens immediately, right? Now, as an action, the dancing creature can make a wisdom saving throw, but pretty much, if the target doesn't make an action to make a wisdom saving throw, which by the way doesn't guarantee the target will succeed on that wisdom saving throw, because you're probably gonna be running Bane and Unsettling Words and all of those features that inflict penalties, the target just kind of like gets to do nothing. And yeah, so it's just kind of like dances in place. That's why it said Irresistible Dance. Whereas Mass Suggestion, if you're dealing with like 20, 30, even like just 10, 5 creatures, chances are not all of them are going to be immune to charm condition, unless all of them are the same type of creature. But anyhow, this spell has been used a couple of times by me and other people, and it's always good. I always say how it's great, and when you get to use it, you feel like a god. So there's like no reason not to try it at least once in your life if you're playing a character high level of a level high enough to do it, right? Alright, so Magical Secrets, that's your level 10 core bard feature. You get to choose any spell from any list, and I usually default to Counterspell, because otherwise you don't get it. It's a reaction spell against mages, which gets to stop any spell being cast at you. At least you get a chance to do it, depending on the level used. And then for your second Magic Secrets, I usually take Wall of Force, because it's a crazy amount of control. And in this particular case, it would kind of like make a thematic sense as well, because You are trying to establish peace. You are a redemption paladin, emissary of peace. Sometimes peace can only be established by imprisoning certain creatures, right? And this is the way to do it, magically, at least temporarily. It is broken. Therefore, if you don't want to cause too much anguish to your DM, Big B's Hand or Find Greater Steed both make sense. And with that, we are done with spells. Moving on to the items. Amulet of the Devout. Well, where's the... Okay, sorry. First, Jester's Mask. It's a legendary item, which is very, very good. +3 to all of your spells, spellcasting. You get to escape, and also kind of like a 10% chance to use your... to roll a nat 20, right? I already talked about it before. Not gonna spend too much time on it. Amulet of the Devout. On top of the Fate Dealer's deck and Rhythm Maker's Drum. They're somewhere here. Yeah, there we go. All of these are pretty much just giving you a +3 bonus to your spell attack rolls, on top of giving you these extra features, which is the primary reason, because if you stack +3 from this, +3 from this, and then Jester's Mask, whatever combination, you have like a +9 to all of your spell attack rolls and spell save DCs, which make it really hard for even like very high challenge rating monsters to pass those saving throws, unless they have legendary resistance, right? But anyhow, at least you get to burn them easier that way. Obviously, Instrument of the Bards, if the DM is not really willing to give you those very rare and legendary items. Adamantine Plate Armor is good as well, even though it doesn't give you any bonus, it prevents crits, right? If you can stack it with the +3 armor or any variety, +2, +1, and shield, it's just, you know, I don't know, treat your DM right, because it's not an official item, it's a homebrew item, so there you go. Mantle of Spell Resistance, you know, it's like, it's a catch-22. I often say if the DM likes throwing spells at you, this is the item that is good for that. But if the DM is like throwing spells at you, that's pretty much for a purpose, right? So why would the DM give you this if it's gonna make it easier to pass those spells, deal with them easier, right? But you know, it's push and pull oftentimes, and it also depends on your relationship, right? But I'm not gonna go into that. This video is already 37 minutes long. Let's finish this with a progression. I already touched upon it a little bit in the first video, and I'm gonna mention it here. I did go with the Charisma +2 for the first 12 levels. So at level 4 you get your first ability score improvement, and at level 12 you get your second one. You can, instead of bumping up your Charisma up to 20, take the Warcaster and Metamagic Adept feat. You can actually take the Metamagic Adept feat first, if you like to use the Emboldening Bond plus Bless spell combo in the first turn, because if you remember, both of those require an action and you only get one of them in a single turn. If you take the Metamagic Adept, you get Quicken Metamagic spell, which can turn your Bless into a bonus action spell, at least temporarily for that turn. I think it's committing too much to a singular combo, which isn't really... It's just like... It's good, but it's not superb, right? Therefore, I wouldn't do it personally, but hey, like, it's not the worst thing to do. It's actually not bad at all. The reason I went with Charisma is I just wanted to bump up your aura of protection and all the other features that rely on your Charisma. Bardic Inspiration, all of the spells, things we talked about. With that, and yeah, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for sticking in. Take care, drink water, live well. Talk to you soon.